7:14 on a Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by our friends at Service Cadillac. Hey, it's brisk outside. You guys made it in okay, Warren Cottle and Carol Ross? And see, you're all scarfed up. Was it cold this morning?
No, it's not that cold. In fact, I walked out the door and I thought, why do I have this scarf on?
Well, it looks nice.
It's kind of an
decorative.
It's an accessory.
Yeah, it's an accessory.
Yes,
It's not quite a Astor Arafat scarf, but it's nice looking.
Please.
Gosh. Gosh. So, all right. Yesterday we had the start of the 115th Congress. Came to order. Swearings in happened. And the news that we had going into yesterday was all about this independent ethics panel. That's kind of a last-minute vote that happened. And that's what we were going to do. And kind of the GOP brass were pushing this along until, as it seems, Donald Trump tweeted and kind of talked about, is this your first order of business? Carol, you think it had anything to do with it?
Well, it had something to do with it, but the phone lines were up there. The switchboards were blowing up. Mm-hmm. Everybody was getting wind of this. Let me tell you, the voters gave the House back to the Republicans back in 2010, right? Well, the Republicans just handed Nancy Pelosi a cudgel. They took the gavel away from her. We took the gavel away from her. They handed her a cudgel to beat them about the head and neck with this whole concept of, oh, the Republicans, they're going to drain the swamp and all that. Who is advising these people? I mean, even Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy, the two leaders in the House, told them, don't do it. We're voting against it, etc. But no, they had to do it. And why? What's their rationale? Well, the rationale has some merit to it. However, there were as many Democrats probably that would have gone on board if they had done it right, because this Office of Congressional Ethics has been, some would say, a little bit aggressive, and they have no due process, little due process. Anonymous complaints are made with very little substantiation. They do have a reason to do some reform, but they could have done it in a bipartisan manner without resorting to this kind of closed door thing. And and the minute this happened, of course, you knew Nancy Pelosi was out there in front of the cameras at the microphone telling everybody, these stupid Republicans, these terrible Republicans, they don't want to have any ethics. They don't want anybody looking at them. And now Donald Trump says he's going to drain. This is what you call draining the swamp? No, I tell you, it makes you understand why Pat Caddell often says, we have two parties. We have the corrupt party and the stupid party. And guess which one he calls the stupid party? Mm-hmm. This is an absolute perfect representation of why. Even if I know they have maybe some good rationale, but the optics on this whole thing, the whole image of them coming out in the dead of night, behind closed doors, behind locked doors. Bob Goodlatte of Virginia pushed this thing. They should change his name to Bob Bad Move.
I heard it equated yesterday. Carol, gosh, I love it. I love you could just ruin my whole train of thought. Great. I heard it yesterday compared to having laws without having police officers. What are the point of either of them without each other? Warren, what do you think about it?
Well, that's pretty much what we have in Louisiana with the Ethics Commission now, and with the legislature and such stuff as that, which is just it's absolutely insane. This deal, in 2000 we elected a president. And we elected a Republican Senate and a Republican House, and it soon became obvious, as I've said over and over and over and over, that they went there and they tried to out-Democrat the Democrats. Not only did they try, but they did one hell of a fine job of it. They even did such a good job of it that Hope and Change came in there 8 years later and completely took over. They're going back, or at least they tried to go back and do the same thing. The Republicans are going in there with a new light, a new era. We're giving you control. We're giving you the main office. We're giving you everything that you have asked for. And what do? You go up there and do the same thing of the group that we just tried to replace or did replace, and you're going to pull some stupid stunt like this. If you don't like the thing, then there's a way to go about changing it. But this thing is exactly what we have always criticized the Democrats for doing. In the middle of the night, to go in there and do something, or, to pass the health care deal, well, you got to pass it before you can find out what's in it. Well, when nobody's going to know, you blah, 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 on and on and on. This is just another one of those examples of how things can go wrong. The good thing about it is at least Donald Trump stepped in and says, look, guys, let's act like adults. And he was the adult in the room to get the thing changed. And so I just hope that this is a trend that at least with his leadership will help straighten up some of the stupidity that comes out of Congress occasionally. And I hope that they get their heads back out in the sunshine and that they march along to what the American people want them to do.
All right,
Absolutely.
Carol, wrap this one up.
And Trump was the most visible opponent to this move. There were many people who were opposed, but this does bring up a point that I think I've made since before the election. If Trump gets elected, he's going to have as much problem with his own party as he does with the Democrats.
It looks like that's what's going to happen. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about something that was part of the campaign promise from Donald Trump, from other Republicans who were elected. That is Obamacare. How soon can Republicans take care of it? How will it happen? Our panelists will weigh in. After this, it's Wingin' It Wednesday on News. There's a live studio audience today for Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by Service Chevrolet Cadillac.
And they're trying to one-up each other.
Well,
Who has the grosser story?
I know. It's what happens here,
of
Bernie.
travel across
Bernie
the globe.
and Carol, I'm sorry, but sometimes this just becomes a locker room.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks. Chief showed up with breakfast.
Have you
Now
ever
you
been to
see?
a woman's locker room?
You know, if ever it's been by accident. Okay,
Oh, it was by accident, he said.
let's talk about Obamacare.
By accident, yeah. A likely story.
I accidentally was like, hey, I need a date tonight. I work in TV. I can go in there.
This is the women's. Oh, I didn't know this
Y'all
was the
are
women's
terrible.
locker room.
Y'all are terrible. And occasionally around here when the men's restrooms are occupied. You know. Did I really
I've
admit
been
that
known
on
to
the
use the
radio?
men's restroom, definitely, if there's a
Yes.
big line. But I'll tell you what, the most gratifying thing, there was that last Walls presentation down at the ACA. You know, they did the story about the movie that was based on the band's last tour, right? The band backed up Bob Dylan, et cetera. Okay, it was a Martin Scorsese film, and they did all the local artists did a representation of it. So I'm coming out and I'm going into the ladies' room. There's a line for the men's room. So I walked down and I just looked at some of my guy friends who were in the men's room and I said, well, this is so exciting. I am so glad to hear. And they were all
Don't
laughing.
stand
They
in
said,
line.
yeah, when do you ever see a line for the men's room?
I'll tell you whenever I realized I snapped and I realized this is fatherhood was when I had to take my daughter with me into the bathroom at Park International downtown.
Yes.
You know, it's all that metal stuff. And so I said, you stand right here. You don't touch the wall. You don't touch.
Yep.
You don't touch anything. You just stand here. And so, so I used the bathroom. We're walking out and she said, Daddy, why'd you potty in the sink? And I realized she had never seen a urinal before.
Oh my God.
And so I said, well, you know what? That's good. You keep believing that. But just so you know, it wasn't the sink. You don't have an excuse to do it.
That's right.
And don't wash your hands.
Yes. All right, moving on our
Hey,
topics. Obamacare. The Republicans promised long to repeal and replace, talking to John Kennedy, our newest senator who's in Washington, said, something else would have to be ready to take its place before a repeal could happen. I don't know, not hearing that from too many other people. Warren, what are your thoughts on this? How long is the clock ticking?
I have no idea, but I've been hearing all of this talk for weeks and months now about repealing and replacing, and you can't repeal without replacing, and on and on and on. You can do it all in one afternoon. It can be done with the same piece of legislation. You repeal and you replace. I was listening to a talk radio program the other day, and somebody was talking about it's like you don't sell your car and then go out looking for a new one. And said, no, you don't. You do it all at one time. You go there, take it to a dealer. They say, this is what we're going to give you for your old one. These keep the things you like about it. When you get your new one, you get it, you drive off. You know, the thing about the Obamacare bill, the Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, it can be repealed and replaced all in one time. But it may take a little while to do it because there are some things about that people don't want to see go away. There's probably 2 or 3 things. The rest of it, they do want to see it going away really quickly. And for these people who stand up there in Congress or whatever and says, well, if you just repeal it, it's going to throw everything in chaos. Really? Well, when
Like
it finally
everything's
took
not in
effect,
chaos
it was
already.
pretty much chaos,
Yeah.
if you ask me.
Still is.
Yes. And so, yeah, I don't think it's going to take much time. I do agree with one of the things that the president-elect said, that you got to get your priorities straight. Don't get sidetracked with this stuff like the ethics bill and all that. Let's sit down and take these things one at a time as they come up. Will any Democrats vote for the repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act? Absolutely, they will. Because you know what? They know how to read votes and they know how to read election returns. And the people at the top up there, the leadership of the Democrats, will probably want to go against every part of it. But in the end, everybody's going to say, we won, because we got to keep these parts, which meant so much to Americans, and blah, 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 and the Republicans didn't get to repeal it like they said they were going to. So, so in the end, it's going to be kind of like the Russian hacking deal with the emails. In the end, both of them are going to be able to claim we were right.
I think it's funny because how many Democrats, even though that's what the voters are saying, and we know that's what seems the voters want, how many will vote against it just to protect what was this legacy piece of legislation? But it has caused so much problems. It's definitely the most criticized too. I don't know, Carol.
The coastal Democrats will vote against any repeal and replace. We know that. But there are many Democrats in the heartland who are up for re-election in 2018, and they've seen the numbers. They saw areas. These are in areas that Trump won big time, and they're going to be looking at those numbers as much as they look at the numbers associated with this bill. Repeal and replace. They can repeal it instantly, no problem there, and then they can phase in whatever they need to do to replace, and that can be part of the bill. The problem is there are so many competing ideas about how to do it among Republicans themselves. I think that is one of the key reasons why Trump picked Tom Price, because he has a plan already pretty clearly lined up, and I think he does have some support for that plan. Apparently, he is the guy who's been doing the most work on this and has it ready to go, and so I think that's one of the reasons why Trump picked him, because he knew that he would have to shepherd this thing. He would have to be the expert on this thing. And I don't think there'll be any problem with holding on to those particular items, like the kids stay on until they're 26, the adults stay on until they're 26, and the pre-existing conditions. Because there's a way. I mean, one of the early things that people said could be done instead of, the mandates and everything to fund the pre-existing conditions was a sort of catastrophic pool that went state by state or whatever. The other problem with this is trying to do a national very specific thing. You have states that have particular needs, and they're different, from other states. So that needs to be a little more flexible. You also need to have competition across state lines, the way you do with auto insurance and life insurance and all kinds of other insurances. So you have more of that competition. And there was never a part tort reform in this. And many, many states are having problems with those kind of things. So, it can be repealed and replaced pretty quickly. The repeal can go into effect immediately as a concept, and then you begin to plug in the replacement items.
All right, we move forward to the Russian hacking, which we have touched on. Julian Assange says he's 1,000% sure that it was not Russia. Meanwhile, the intelligence agencies say they're 100% sure. So we're talking 100% versus 1,000%. We'll have to see where this ends up. We'll tackle that next. Service Cadillac brings you Winging It Wednesday each and every week. By far the largest selection in the area. Every color, every trim. Get exactly what you want at Service Cadillac. Huge selection, all kinds of vehicles. Let me tell you.
Great affordability.
The remote start, the adjustable seats, yesterday and all that fog, the heads-up display.
How does that work?
So you look out your windshield, and it's just right there in front of you. Your speed limit, how far until you have to turn. You don't have to worry about passing up your turn in that bad fog. Bernie, we got to go take a test drive real soon, because
I like that.
It is nice. Hey, what about a luxury pre-owned vehicle that'll fit your style and budget? The Certified Pre-Owned program, lots to choose from, lots to see. Relax and experience the difference at Service Cadillac. Or, we talk about in the summer, go and soak up their AC and eat their popcorn and drink their water.
Sure.
Well, maybe escape the cold. Go enjoy their heat.
That's lovely.
They're an all-season kind of joint over there. Go see them, 1212 Ambassador Caffrey, just near the interstate on Ambassador Caffrey, and check out the Wash It Up Wednesday right there on the lot at Service Cadillac. 7:33 Winging It Wednesday continues after this. 7:37 on Winging It Wednesday. The things you would learn. We should have a studio audience and charge an admission, because there are folks who would pay good money to see this in person.
Oh, yeah.
But then we couldn't act this way.
Then we could. Yeah, you're right. We totally could.
Hey, speak for yourself, okay?
All right, so Julian Assange, possibly the most vitamin D deficient person in the entire world, who's been in the Ecuadorian embassy. I told Bernie earlier that he reminds me of the guy from the Da Vinci Code. Remember the
the albino.
Yes.
Assassin.
Assange looks just like him.
Very similar.
Sean Hannity talked yesterday about kind of getting a last minute, okay, if you're going to come, you better come right now. He got on a plane and went there, interviewed him, and flew home, the same day. Got about an hour to speak with him, in which he says he's 1,000% sure that this hacking we keep talking about is not from the Russians. It was definitely an internal leak. Now, someone on the show earlier this week called in and reminded us, because I had forgotten about this detail, that all those emails came from a Gmail account.
John Podesta's.
A Gmail account.
It was a phishing.
Yeah, it
totally. Wasn't hacking, it was phishing, and he opened the door to all of it.
Yeah, so we'll see. Trump says he's going to get at an intelligence briefing on Friday. We'll see what happens with that. Carol, what do you make of all this? Is it ever going to go away?
Well, I have been plumbing the depths of this thing because I really, because most of the people that I trust who have looked at some of this stuff say that there's no specificity in the reports from Homeland Security and the FBI. They just say in generic terms certain things that they've seen. One of the things that they said was it was in the Cyrillic alphabet. Well, millions of people use the Cyrillic alphabet. Let me just go through it.
It almost seems like if you wanted to pose as Russian, you would use it anyway, right?
Well, exactly. But they, in Fortune magazine, they had laid out some of this stuff. The report was called Grizzly Step, STEPPE, Step, like the Russian steps. And it didn't have the detail. A guy by the name, he was an author of Inside Cyber Warfare, Jeffrey Carr. He said the report adds nothing to the call for evidence that the Russian government was responsible. Another guy, Robert Lee, an Air Force cyber warfare officer, was quoted saying that he's a cybersecurity fellow, by the way, at North America, which at New America. He argues the report is of limited use, in part because of poor organization, lack of crucial details. And they said the primary method used in this report is spear phishing. According to spear phishing, it's a common hacking approach. You receive a message, which Podesta did, that invites you to open this and blah, blah, blah. And he did, and that gave him remote access. They call it remote access tool, RATS, to get into the system. And he not only opened his, he opened up the whole DNC. That's why they were able to get their hands on it. So there's now here's the alternative. By the way, there are two other guys who were quoted. One from WordFence, which is a cybersecurity firm. Another one is Errata Security. They were both quoted saying virtually the very same thing that these guys said. That it's very non-specific, and any number of things could have caused this, not necessarily just the Russians. But here's the alternative explanation. One, it's unproven, but it is kind of plausible. Ukrainian hackers. Everybody believed Hillary was going to win, right? They all thought Hillary was going to win. So they wanted to sabotage the DNC and the Clinton campaign to make them think it was the Russians and make her retaliate against the Russians if and when she got elected. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. But, the specific, some guy said they traced it back to specific keyboards. But, people all over Russia, in many parts of the world, including the Ukraine, use that Cyrillic alphabet. So, it's very non-specific at this point, and I would imagine that the president supposedly is going to have a press conference and lay it all out, and I would imagine that his is going to be, as he usually does, in broad generalities that mean absolutely nothing, but he'll use the language very well to obfuscate the truth, like he usually does.
I'm going to quote the best expert that I know of on all of this stuff, and what he has said over and over and over, and that expert would be myself. When all of this, going back even before this thing started, we went back to the what was the Patriot Act, where they wanted the feds to have everybody's the NSA passwords and all that kind of such stuff, and so that I said way back then, everything you do is recorded, everything, and I'm talking about electronic stuff, and it always has been. That sure, they're going to say the Russians recorded this stuff. Of course they did. The Russians recorded, the Japanese recorded, the Chinese recorded, the French recorded, the Germans recorded, the British recorded, and on and on and on. It's not who records it, or who gets it. It's what they do with it, and that's where everything breaks down in all of this stuff. Okay, the Russian, we got beliefs, we got real knowledge that the Russians actually recorded or intercepted a lot of these emails. Well, really, I had to change that just a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course they did. And you know what? We record everything too, but it's not what you record, it's what you do with it. And so that's where the big fallacy comes in on all of this stuff. And what did I say over and over and over? And this is what's going to come out one of these days. It might not. And that is going to be every bit of these things that were given to Julian Assange came out of somebody inside the NSA. I will be willing to bet my bottom dollar, because they sat there and have been so double-crossed. They have been so misled and so maligned, and that they were just up in arms over what Hillary Clinton was doing as Secretary of State, how she sold out this country, how they had that pay-for-play deal, and on and on and on. And I will guarantee you, just like the guys in the Army or whatever who downloaded a bunch of the secret stuff and sent it out there, and said we couldn't stand it anymore, whether they were right or wrong. Of course, what they did was illegal, but still they did it for a reason. And whether that reason is right or wrong, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm going to say it's exactly who put this stuff out, or people who had access to it. They looked at it and they said, somebody in the world needs to know this. It's got to be stopped. I think that's where it comes from. I think it's what Julian Assange is saying over and over and over, that the Russians didn't give the stuff to him, somebody else did, and I think that somebody else is going to wind up being a good old patriotic, red-blooded American.
Maybe, but Podesta opened the door. That's the crux of it. Podesta opened the door. They're not, and the thing is that it's that the way the Democrats are couching this, that it's hacked into our election. No, they didn't hack into the election. They hacked into the DNC. Had nothing to do with the election. They really did not affect the election one way or the other. But this is just a way to muddy the waters and try to delegitimize Trump before he even gets into office. So.
Yeah, the only thing about the election was what the Democrats were saying.
Well, yeah.
Was what they were doing with it. You know,
that they were being totally dishonest.
Oh, absolutely.
That the media was colluding with them on questions at debates and all that sort of stuff.
What's
the
out
best
now?
thing
You're
you
in the middle
did.
of the media in here.
This is local media, and I make the distinction I always have between local media and the big boys who have an agenda, and they push it on all the time.
I'll tell you this: I don't even think the actual hacking actually happened. I think there was a disgruntled staffer who had access to the email.
Well, what about that young man who was killed, who was on his way to testify about something? I don't know. Those are all conspiracy theories, but I know that Podesta opened the door to it all. The word got out, and there were a lot of people who got to see what was really going on behind the scenes, because the whole thing was Hillary was crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary. That's what they believed anyway. And so all this did was reinforce that. And how many young people had their hopes, that they had put into Bernie Sanders dashed because of what was done to him by the DNC. There were any number of people who had it in for the DNC.
Politics is muddy, muddy, muddy. Coming up, we're going to talk about the guy who says he wants to replace Jack Monasse as a state representative after he was tapped to lead the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. Talked to him yesterday, Jay Swear, who talked about jobs, who talked about the oil industry, the economy in general. We'll get the panelists' thoughts on that coming up. But first, traffic. Bernie, how are things out there? Howdy. 7:50 on Wingin' a Wednesday, brought to you by our friends over at Service Cadillac.
We gotta go feed the chickens. Hold on.
All that's missing is the hat with the price tag hanging from it. Howdy.
Proud to be here.
Oh yeah.
So you would imagine my shock and surprise after my kids came home from my parents' house property, like out St. Tammany, Washington Parish, and came home talking about Little Boy, Snowman, and Miss Marie. Little boy, Snowman, and Miss Marie all the time. And finally, I asked my mom, like, where did you bring them? Who are these people? She said, those are our cows.
The cows.
Oh, gosh. I leave them for 4 days with you guys, and they're rolling down mud hills in their diapers and talking to the cows. All right.
Well,
what a
it's all
great
about being well-rounded.
experience for those urban kiddies.
Yeah,
they're used to driving around in Cadillacs, they're out on the farm.
Going through the wash. Now they're milking cows.
Hey, whoa.
It's all about
Miss
being
Marie
well-rounded.
And,
and little man.
Miss Marie.
Little man.
Anyway, okay. We talked a little bit.
Big job, just.
Jack Monasse's seat has become available in an instant after he was appointed to be the Secretary of the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries. Literally 10 minutes after we found out about Monasey, we found out who was putting his name in the race already. I'm sure more will probably come, but Jay Swear from Crowley. We talked to him yesterday. Just thoughts on the seat, thoughts on not necessarily thoughts on Jay Swear if you don't want to go there, but just kind of thoughts on what do you think he could bring or what is needed in the State House. Carol?
Well, full disclosure, I knew his wife before I knew him, Laurie, and just a terrific lady, beautiful and smart, and did a little PR work for a company that she was working. We were kind of working together a little bit for a while. She's a really terrific lady. I met Jay. Jay used to do some work. I think he did some PR work for Mike Francis years ago. He is a Republican, but he's that odd anomaly trial lawyer Republican. He works with the Glenn Armator law firm, which I think will stand him in good stead in the district that he wants to represent. I think he's a great guy. He really is smart, articulate. I think he'd be a very good representative, for that district. And I don't think this is any surprise. Warren can probably add more to it. But when you see something happen this quickly, you know that there might have been a little bit of coordination. Jack Monasey was term limited, and believe me, Charlie Melançon's days were numbered. The sport fishermen were after him because they felt that he colluded with the commercial fishermen on the red snapper management, and felt he was too chummy with the commercial fishermen on that. And so, and how do I know this? Because I had breakfast with my friend who is my authority on all things hunting and fishing. And this was about 3 weeks ago when the word was just burbling out about Melançon. I said, well, what's wrong with him? He said, oh, you have no idea. The sport fishermen, the CCA, the Coastal Conservation Authority, whatever. Garrett Graves, the congressman, was after his butt. The governor was after his butt. His days were numbered. Yeah. So we knew that didn't know that Montasey would be the one who would be chosen, but apparently that was in the works for a while too. These things don't just happen overnight. So and it could very well be that he and Jay Swear, had maybe met. Warren probably knows a little bit more about that than I do.
About Jay Boy?
Well.
Oh, here we go. Uh-oh.
The only thing I'm going to say is that he is going to be by far the odds-on favorite to win that thing, because if anybody else wants to get in that race, you better come loaded with 2 steamer trunks full of cash, because he will have all the money he wants to spend on that race. And if there's any such a thing as that money can buy an election, he's going to have money coming in from all sides. And Jay is a nice guy, and he has been working and laying the foundation to run for a legislative seat for a long time, basically as long as I have known him, which has been years, probably before he ever even went to college. I don't know, but he's really a nice guy. He's well liked, And he is a successful trial attorney with Glenn Armator, and which is the official legal page of the KPEL radio listening audience.
Right. The legal authority, the KPEL legal authority.
And anyway, that he had already said that he wanted to run when Jack retired or left, and so if anybody else is going to step in there, they better be ready. And of course they may. That is also a pretty Democratic district, but now we will see. A lot of these heavily Democrat districts have changed over the years, and so this one may do the same thing on this go-round.
All right, very interesting as always. It just seems so weird to. I was kind of enjoying the break of not even talking about any seats, any openings, any elections, or anything like that. But
no.
It's just a. It's just a.
This
circle,
is Louisiana.
Vicious cycle.
Come on, Rob. It's Louisiana. They're always jockeying for some kind of government job.
7:55 Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you every week by Service Cadillac. We appreciate them, of course, as always.
And go Cajun basketball. Whoa.
Yeah, Cajuns.
Unbelievable.
Stevie P's all excited. He came in, he could hardly sit down in his seat.
I'm telling you.
All right. We're back after this. First, Fox Business Report and news at the top of the hour. Stay with us. It's Acadiana's Morning News.